No one saw the first dragon. Not clearly. Not completely. All they knew was that the sky, once blue, calm, ordinary, suddenly cracked open like a burning wound. A shadow passed over the sun, too massive to be a cloud, too fast to be anything human. Then came the sound. A roar. Not just heard, but felt. It shook bones. It crawled into lungs. It made soldiers drop their rifles and civilians fall to their knees without knowing why. And then the fire came. Cities didn't burn. They vanished. Steel towers melted like wax. Highways twisted into black veins. Entire battalions disappeared under waves of heat so intense that nothing, not armor, not concrete, not hope, could withstand it. Within hours, the world understood one thing. Dragons were real, and humanity was not ready. 3 years later, Commander Elias Vance stood at the edge of the last human stronghold, staring at the scarred horizon. Once, this had been a thriving military base. Now it was humanity's final stand, a fortress built from desperation and stubborn refusal to die. Behind him stood what remained of the human army. 12,000 soldiers. That was it. No reinforcements. No allies. No rescue coming. Just 12,000 men and women against an empire of creatures that ruled the skies like gods. "Scout report just came in," a voice said behind him. Elias didn't turn. "How bad?" A pause. That was answer enough. "Say it," he said quietly. Captain Rowan stepped forward, her face pale, eyes hardened by too many battles. "They've spotted movement. Massive movement. At least 50 dragons." Elias exhaled slowly. 50. It only took one to wipe out a city. "They're not scouting anymore," Rowan continued. "They're coming to finish it." Of course they were. The dragons had spent years hunting humanity to the brink of extinction. Burning cities. Collapsing governments. Erasing history itself. Now, they wanted the last page. Elias finally turned, looking at the soldiers gathering below. Some checked their weapons. Others sat quietly, writing final messages that would never be delivered. "They think this is the end," Rowan said. "They're right," Elias replied. Rowan frowned. "That's not exactly inspiring, sir." Elias gave a faint, humorless smile. "I didn't say it's the end for us." He pointed toward the sky. "It's the end for them." Deep beneath the fortress, hidden behind layers of reinforced steel, something ancient and terrifying waited. It wasn't human. It wasn't dragon. It was something humanity had created in the desperate years after the first attack. A weapon born not from hope, but from rage. "Is it ready?" Elias asked. Rowan hesitated. "The scientists say it's unstable." "Everything is unstable," Elias said. "That hasn't stopped us before. It could kill us too." Elias looked back at the horizon, where distant shapes were beginning to form, massive wings cutting through the clouds, growing larger with every second. "Then we'll die on our terms." Sirens began to scream across the base. The dragons were coming. Soldiers rushed to their positions. Anti-air cannons powered up, their barrels rising toward the sky. Missiles locked onto targets that moved faster than anything they were designed to hit. And above it all, the sky darkened. They came in waves. Gigantic. Terrifying. Beautiful in the way storms are beautiful, if storms had teeth and hunger. Fire rained down before the first shot was even fired. Explosions ripped through the outer defenses. Walls shattered. Screams echoed as the first line of defense was erased in seconds. "Open fire!" Elias roared. The world erupted. Missiles streaked upward. Cannons thundered. The sky became a battlefield of fire and steel. And still, the dragons kept coming. One dove straight into the base, crashing through defenses like paper. Soldiers scattered as its massive claws tore through armored vehicles, its jaws snapping shut on anything that moved. Another unleashed a torrent of flame that turned an entire platoon into ash in a heartbeat. Rowan fired her rifle, knowing it wouldn't do much, but refusing to stand still. "We can't hold them," she shouted. Elias watched the chaos unfold. He knew she was right. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution. "Unless—" "Activate it," he said. Rowan froze. "Sir." "Now." Deep underground, lights flickered to life. Machines hummed. And something awakened. Above, the dragons circled, confident, unstoppable. They believed this was humanity's last stand. They believed they had already won. They had no idea. This was the moment humanity stopped surviving and started hunting. The ground shook. At first, no one noticed. The battlefield was already chaos. Explosions, dragon fire, collapsing steel. But this was different. This wasn't destruction from above. This was something rising from below. Commander Elias Vance stood firm as the tremor pulsed through the base. Around him, soldiers stumbled, some glancing down in confusion. "Sir, what did we just activate?" Captain Rowan asked, her voice tight. Elias didn't answer immediately, because even he wasn't completely sure anymore. Deep beneath the fortress, sealed doors slid open one by one, releasing clouds of cold vapor. Massive cables sparked to life, feeding power into a chamber that had never been meant to stay dormant this long. Inside it, something moved. Not like a machine. Not like a beast. Something in between. A low sound echoed through the chamber, metal grinding against metal, mixed with something disturbingly close to a breath. Then, a pair of eyes ignited. Not organic. Not entirely artificial. Burning white. Above ground, the dragons pressed their attack. One slammed into a watchtower, reducing it to rubble. Another swooped low, claws snatching soldiers off the ground before tossing them aside like broken toys. "Fall back to inner perimeter," Rowan shouted, dragging a wounded soldier behind cover. Flames roared overhead, forcing everyone lower. The heat was unbearable, the air thick with ash and smoke. Elias keyed into his comm. "Status on the weapon?" Static answered him. Then, "It's online," a trembling voice replied. "But, sir, it's not responding to commands." Elias' grip tightened. "What do you mean, not responding?" "It's moving on its own." The ground split open, right in the center of the base. Concrete shattered outward as something massive forced its way up from beneath. Soldiers scrambled back as debris rained down, the very earth groaning under the pressure. And then it emerged. At first glance, it looked like a war machine, towering, armored, built with jagged edges and reinforced plating. But no machine moved like that. It didn't rise stiffly. It unfolded, like it had been asleep, like it had been buried. And now, it was awake. Its head lifted slowly, scanning the battlefield. That white glow from its eyes swept across humans and dragons alike. Rowan stared. "What is that?" Elias exhaled. "That," he said quietly, "is Project Revenant." The nearest dragon noticed it first. A massive creature with scales like molten rock, wings stretching wider than the base itself. It turned mid-air, letting out a deafening roar as it locked onto the new threat. Then it dove. Fast. Furious. Unstoppable. Incoming, soldiers shouted. But the revenant didn't move. Not until the last second. Then it vanished. Not literally. Just too fast to follow. One moment it stood in the crater, the next it was gone, and the dragon crashed into empty ground, skidding violently across the base. Before it could recover, the revenant was already there. Its arm, if it could be called that, shifted, reshaping itself mid-motion into a massive blade of glowing energy. And with one clean strike, it cut the dragon in half. Silence fell, just for a second. Then chaos returned, louder than before. "Did you see that?" Rowan gasped. Elias didn't respond. He was watching the revenant. Because something about it wasn't right. It hadn't just attacked efficiently. It had chosen its moment. Like it understood the battle. Like it was thinking. The dragons reacted instantly. 3 of them broke formation, circling the revenant like predators unsure of a new rival. Fire poured down from above, engulfing it completely. The explosion rocked the base. "Is it gone?" someone whispered. The flames cleared. It was still standing. Not a scratch. Slowly, it lifted its head again. And then, it looked at the humans. Every soldier felt it. That gaze. Cold. Calculating. Measuring. Rowan took a step back. "Sir, I don't think we control that thing." Elias' jaw tightened. "We never did," he said. The revenant moved again. But this time, not toward the dragons. It stepped forward, toward the human lines. Weapons raised instantly. "Hold your fire," Elias shouted. But fear spread faster than orders. A soldier fired. The shot hit the revenant's chest, and did nothing. Its head tilted slightly, almost curiously. Then it raised its arm. Energy gathered. Rowan's eyes widened. "Sir!" Before she could finish, a dragon slammed into the revenant from above, knocking it sideways in a thunderous impact. The blast of force threw soldiers off their feet. The creature roared, claws digging into the revenant as it unleashed fire point-blank. And for the first time, the revenant fought back. Violently. Not precise. Not controlled. Savage. Elias watched, realization creeping in. "This isn't a weapon," he muttered. Rowan looked at him. "Then what is it?" Elias didn't look away from the battle, where metal and fire clashed like titans, where something humanity had built was tearing into dragons with terrifying efficiency, and zero restraint. "It's something we woke up," he said, "and I don't think it cares who wins." As the revenant ripped the dragon apart, it let out a sound. Not mechanical. Not animal. Something else. Something that made every human on that battlefield feel the same chilling thought. We are not the only ones fighting for survival anymore. The revenant stood in the center of the battlefield, surrounded by fire, shattered steel, and the remains of a dragon it had torn apart with its bare hands. For a moment, everything paused. Even the dragons hesitated. That alone was enough to terrify every human watching, because dragons didn't hesitate. They dominated. They destroyed. They never doubted. Until now. Commander Elias Vance narrowed his eyes, watching the revenant carefully. "Why did it stop?" Rowan whispered beside him. Elias didn't answer, because the moment felt wrong. Too quiet. Too deliberate. High above, the remaining dragons circled, their formation broken. Low, rumbling growls echoed across the sky as they kept their distance, no longer rushing in blindly. They had learned, and that made them even more dangerous. One of them, larger than the rest, its scales darker, its wings scarred from countless battles, descended slowly. Not attacking. Observing. Rowan swallowed. That one. It's different. Elias nodded. That's not a soldier. The dragon landed heavily, its massive claws cracking the ground beneath it. Smoke curled from its nostrils as it stared directly at the revenant. Then, something impossible happened. It didn't attack. It spoke. Not in words humans could understand, but in a deep, resonating series of growls and vibrations that seemed to shake the air itself. A command. A question. A warning. No one knew. But the revenant reacted. Its head tilted, just slightly, as if listening. "Sir, tell me that thing isn't actually responding," Rowan said. Elias stayed silent. Because it was. The revenant took a step forward. Not aggressive. Not defensive. Measured. The dragon's wings flared slightly, but it didn't strike. Instead, it let out another series of low, thunder-like sounds. And again, the revenant listened. Then everything went wrong. Without warning, another dragon, smaller, younger, less patient, broke formation and dove toward the revenant with a furious screech. "No!" Rowan shouted instinctively. Too late. The dragon unleashed a blast of fire mid-air, aiming directly at the revenant's head. The battlefield lit up again. Chaos returned. But this time, the revenant didn't react like before. It didn't dodge. It didn't counter immediately. It endured the flames. And then, it moved. Faster than anything on that battlefield had a right to move. It caught the dragon mid-air. Not with precision. With rage. What followed wasn't a fight. It was a massacre. The revenant slammed the dragon into the ground once. Twice. Again. Each impact shook the base, cracking what little remained of its structure. The dragon shrieked, trying to escape, wings flailing wildly. It didn't get the chance. The revenant tore one wing off, then the other, and when the creature tried to crawl away, it crushed its skull. Silence fell again, heavier this time, darker. Rowan took a slow step back. That wasn't defense. Elias nodded grimly. No, that was anger. The larger dragon, the one that had spoken, let out a deep, echoing roar. Not of rage, of realization. And suddenly, everything changed. All remaining dragons in the sky pulled back. Far back. They weren't attacking anymore. They were retreating. "Sir, they're falling back," a soldier said in disbelief. Rowan blinked. That's never happened before. Elias' eyes stayed locked on the revenant. "Yeah," he said quietly. "They're not afraid of us." The revenant turned slowly. And this time, there was no hesitation. It faced the human lines. Weapons were raised instantly. Dozens of rifles, heavy cannons, missile locks, all aimed at one thing. "Hold your fire," Elias shouted. No one moved. No one lowered their weapon, because now they understood. The dragons weren't the apex predator anymore. The revenant took another step forward, then another, each one slow, deliberate. Rowan's voice dropped. It's choosing. Elias didn't respond, because he knew what she meant. It wasn't confused. It wasn't malfunctioning. It was deciding. The white glow in its eyes flickered slightly as it scanned the humans, studying them, judging them, the same way it had judged the dragons. Then, in a motion that froze every soldier in place, the revenant raised its arm. Energy began to gather again, brighter than before, stronger, unstable. "Sir," Rowan whispered, her voice barely audible. Elias didn't look away. "Yeah," he said. "I know." For the first time since the war began, humanity wasn't facing extinction from above. It was standing face to face with something worse, something it had created, something it didn't understand, something that had just made one thing very clear. It wasn't on their side. As the energy reached its peak, as every soldier braced for impact, as the last human army prepared to be erased by its own creation, the revenant stopped. Its arm trembled. The light flickered violently. For a brief second, something inside it struggled. And then, it lowered its weapon. Confusion rippled through the battlefield. Rowan blinked. What just happened? Elias stared, his expression unreadable. "Something," he said slowly, "just fought for control. And whatever that something was, it might be the only thing keeping humanity alive." The battlefield was silent in a way that felt unnatural. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if it too feared what had awakened below the human lines. Commander Elias Vance didn't lower his eyes from the revenant. It had halted its destructive advance, its glowing white eyes now fixed on the horizon where the dragons lingered, circling cautiously. The dragons were no longer confident rulers of the sky. They were students of a lesson they barely understood. Rowan exhaled shakily. "Sir, what do we do now? That thing, whatever it is, it's not under our control." Elias nodded. "No, but it just sent the dragons running. That's enough. For now." From the far edge of the fortress, scouts returned, faces pale, lungs burning from smoke and heat. "Commander, reports from the perimeter. Dragons are retreating. But there are more of them coming. They're regrouping." Elias clenched his fists. "Then we'll fight them again. But this time, we fight on our terms." He looked at Rowan. "Get the surviving units together. We move out. We can't stay here and wait for them to strike again." Rowan swallowed and nodded. "Yes, sir." As human forces regrouped, the revenant remained still. Its arm, capable of annihilation, now hung at its side. It did not follow orders. It did not respond to them. And yet, when humans moved, it moved in tandem, as if instinctively understanding that their survival was tied to its own. Elias watched this carefully. "Whatever it is, it's aligned with our fight. For now. That's enough to give us hope." The dragons returned at dusk. Their numbers had doubled, waves upon waves of fire-breathing terror preparing to obliterate humanity's last stand. The humans braced, ammunition and weapons at the ready. Then came the unexpected. The revenant moved first. Faster than anything, it struck the nearest dragon before it could dive, cutting through its wing with a single swipe of energy. Another followed, and another. The dragons had faced human armies, catapults, missiles, even nuclear weapons. None of it compared to this. Rowan shouted over the chaos. "They're being shredded before they even touch us." Elias' jaw tightened. "Good. But stay sharp. One misstep." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. They all knew. The humans advanced. 12,000 soldiers, battered but unbroken, surged forward behind the revenant. It wasn't giving commands, it wasn't human, but it created openings, tore down obstacles, and made the impossible fight possible. Dragons screamed in disbelief as humans, once prey, became hunters. Missile fire, cannon blasts, and relentless rifle volleys met their flanks. Elias' voice rose above the roar. For every city they burned, for every life they took, we are the reckoning. By nightfall, the battlefield was a massacre. Dragons fell in numbers no human army could ever achieve alone. Still, some dragons remained, smart, experienced, vicious. They coordinated, attempted flanking maneuvers, and tried to bring the revenant down. Each time, it responded, faster than thought, smarter than instinct, and more lethal than anything alive. For the first time in recorded history, dragons feared humans, and humanity feared nothing. As the sun rose on the battlefield the next day, silence descended. Not the silence of fear, the silence of victory. The surviving dragons took to the skies, wings battered, fire quenched, and numbers decimated. The largest dragon, the one who had first communicated with the revenant, lingered one last moment, looking down at the humans and the revenant. Then it ascended and disappeared beyond the horizon. Rowan exhaled, looking at the shattered but standing humans. "Is it over?" Elias shook his head. "Not completely. But for the first time in centuries, we've won a fight we weren't supposed to survive." And in the distance, the revenant stood motionless. Its eyes flickered as if acknowledging the humans. And then, almost imperceptibly, it turned and disappeared into the ruins below, leaving them with one undeniable truth. They had fought the impossible. Months passed, and the world began to rebuild. Cities lay in ruins, governments were shattered, but humanity survived. The story of the last human army against the Dragon Empire became legend, a tale of resilience, strategy, and the weapon that changed everything. Commander Elias Vance stood on a ridge overlooking the valley that had been the final battlefield. Smoke still drifted from some areas, but the sun rose over a land that had refused to die. Beside him, Rowan surveyed the troops, soldiers who had once been terrified, now hardened, confident and alive. "Do you think they'll return?" Rowan asked quietly. Elias' eyes narrowed at the horizon. "Dragons will always exist somewhere, but we've shown them. Humanity doesn't bow. Humanity fights. And when we fight—" He let the words hang. "We win." Rumors spread quickly. Stories of the Revenant, the creature that fought both dragon and human enemies, circulated among the survivors. Some called it humanity's guardian. Others whispered that it was something beyond comprehension, something born of human desperation and rage. But no one doubted one fact. It had changed the course of history. Training resumed. Cities began to rebuild. Technology advanced at a rate never seen before, driven by the knowledge that humans were no longer prey. They were predators in their own right. And the last human army, though smaller than before, became the seed of a new world order. A world where humanity would never again be underestimated. Elias walked through the camps, looking at the soldiers, men and women who had stared death in the eye and survived. He paused at a memorial newly built, with the names of those who had fallen. He knelt, placing a hand on the cold stone. "They believed we couldn't survive," he whispered. "We proved them wrong." Rowan stood beside him, her expression calm but resolute. "And the world will never forget it." Elias straightened. "No, but we also won't wait for them to forget. We prepare. We train. We fight smarter. We endure. Somewhere deep underground, hidden from human eyes, the revenant rested. Its eyes flickered briefly, white energy pulsing softly. It had chosen its place in the battle, and it had chosen humanity's side, though perhaps not entirely willingly. But for now, it was enough, because the last human army had survived. The Dragon Empire had been broken, and the dawn belonged to humans. As the first true sunrise in years painted the sky, Elias turned to Rowan and the soldiers around him. "Today," he said, voice ringing across the valley, "we rebuild. Today humanity rises, not as prey, not as victims, but as the hunters of our own fate." And the world listened. The dragons had learned fear. Humanity had learned power. And somewhere, deep in the ruins, something greater still had awakened. The war was over. The fight for survival had just begun.